as we all predicted, it is the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers in the 2025 NBA Eastern Conference Final. Throwback series for somebody of my age demographic, if you will. Welcome to OddsShark. I am Ninja. He is Chris Walder. We're going to break it all down here. Chris will have his pick at the bottom of the video. But last series for TNT, Reggie Miller, ironically, going to be on the broadcast crew for this. Steve, let's have a look at those odds for this Eastern Conference Finals between two old rivals. As you see here, odds from FanDuel, of course, subject to change. Pacers are the dogs here, plus 126. Knicks minus 148. Series spread at a game and a half. Knicks plus 152 to win by 2 or more. And, of course, under 5.5 games, plus 152 there. Chris, let me start with this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised are you that this is the Eastern Conference Finals matchup, given that every week on our NBA show we were talking about Celtics Cavs?
Well, a 0, because I always had, look at the bottom here. I always had the New York Knicks getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, winning the NBA championship. But no, in all honesty, it's like a 100. We all projected it was going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics. But unfortunately, which is kind of just the lay of the land in professional sports, injuries do occur. We saw Jason Tatum go down in Game 4 at Madison Square Garden. Cleveland was banged up in that series against Indiana. That's not to take anything away from these two teams. The Pacers and the New York Knicks undoubtedly deserve to be in this position. But you go through the regular season, you're told that the regular season does matter to an extent. 82 games of seeing just Cleveland and Boston run roughshod through the Eastern Conference. We were projecting that matchup to see the clash of the Titans, and it ultimately didn't manifest. But in terms of kind of like a backup plan, you can't do much better than Pacers and the Knicks, considering their history.
You alluded to, your favor with the New York Knicks. Steve, why don't you roll that clip? Chris, I'll start with you. Can anyone stop the Boston Celtics?
Again, I'm going to regret it. I got the New York Knicks coming out of the Eastern Conference this season. I have them getting to the NBA Finals. I'm going down with that ship. New York gets out of the East.
Chris, who do you got out of the West?
It's going to be a rematch of the WNBA Finals, because it's going to be New York versus Minnesota competing for the NBA championship this year.
We'll talk about the Western Conference, closer to Game 1. But, Chris, you got to feel slightly vindicated. That was recorded way back at the beginning of October. You got to feel slightly vindicated with that Knicks call.
Let the record show that I never once veered away from that pick. I know on social media and maybe on a past episode of The Huddle, I may have said that the Boston Celtics would sweep the New York Knicks in this series, but I was just off my game that day. I want to go back to the original pick that I made preseason, even during the midseason predictions about the New York Knicks getting to this point. I totally saw it coming. And look, I thought the ceiling of this team was always to get to this point. You make that blockbuster trade to bring aboard Karl Anthony Towns, an all-star in the prime of his career. You trade a treasure's trove of first-round picks to the Brooklyn Nets to the Brooklyn Nets to get Mikal Bridges, to shore up your defense, to go up against a Celtics team that has Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And of course, which is the case for all extended runs in the postseason, you need a little bit of luck involved. The Tatum injury is unfortunate. It sucks that he's going to probably miss most of next season with that torn Achilles, but it kind of takes me back to the greatest title run that I ever saw, and I'm completely biased, which is 2019, when the Toronto Raptors did it. Lest we forget, in Game 7 of the second round, we saw that Kawhi Leonard buzzer beater hit the rim 4 times and eventually fell through. And even in the finals itself against the Golden State Warriors, Klay Thompson got hurt. Kevin Durant tried to make a miraculous comeback, and he got injured as well. That obviously helped Toronto capture its first championship in franchise history. So a lot of things fell into place for the New York Knicks. They played well enough to beat Boston. They took 2 games at TD Garden. That wasn't a fluke. And they were winning that game, Game 4, prior to Tatum going down. I think they would have ended up winning the series anyway. But again, a lot of things fell in line for this team. And now they're where they are, and with a chance of ending this 51-year championship drought.
Yeah, it's certainly on the table here for the Knicks. And it's a matchup between the Knicks and the Pacers of contrasts. And I want to hit on a couple of those right now. First and foremost, part of the narrative going into Game 1 at least, Indy's depth, they can go 11 deep versus the heavy minutes, the well-documented heavy minutes that Tibbs puts out there on that starting rotation. Steve has the graphic here. Like it's pretty crazy. Are you surprised then that the Knicks haven't quite broken down just yet, given the workload that they get game in, game out?
Well, knock on wood that ultimately doesn't turn out to be the case because, yeah, I would say I'm a little bit surprised that we haven't seen any key injuries as of this point because, during the regular season, we heard about that story that Mikal Bridges approached Tom Thibodeau to say, hey, we need to start giving the bench a little bit more playing time, not just to alleviate some of the pressure on the shoulders of the starting lineup, but just to give the second unit a little bit more run because in the postseason, you never know when you're going to need like a Precious Achua, Mitchell Robinson, once he got healthy during the regular season, Deuce McBride, Cameron Payne, those guys can go. Those guys have had strong games in the past. But, under Thibodeau's regime, the Anunobys, the Bridgeses, the Brunsons of the world, they're still going to be playing 38, 39, 40 minutes. And that is eventually going to take its toll. And in a second round like this, where the schedule dictates that there's only one day of rest between games, that can inevitably hurt the Knicks in the end when you look at that Pacers rotation where they are going 10 to 11 players deep. And if they decide to run the Knicks out of the building, that can hurt them in the end as well because New York is, again, as stout as they are defensively, they are going to run on fumes at some point in this series if the Pacers just run and gun offense at Madison Square Garden, at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So, yeah, it's something to keep note of in this matchup.
Yeah, and that's the other sort of narrative or subplot or contrast in this series that I wanted to talk about, and its tempo, its pace. The Knicks want to play in the half court, 26th ranked in terms of pace. Indiana is 7th. Are you expecting a decided edge one way or the other when it comes to totals for over-bettors or under-bettors?
Not necessarily. I mean, the Pacers have gone over with a 6-4 record in the playoffs so far. The New York Knicks are 5-6-1 in this market the last time I checked. And when these two teams squared off during the regular season, they were 2-1 in this department as well, going over on the scoreboard. So, like I mentioned earlier, Indiana is going to try and push the pace as much as possible. And as we've discussed as ad nauseum, the Knicks do run such a tight rotation. Their starters are getting 38 plus minutes a night. And head coach Rick Carlisle of the Pacers, he can go 10 or 11 deep most days. I saw this stat. 8 players are averaging more than 8.5 points per game on the Pacers, and 11 have played at least 96 minutes this postseason. So it would be in New York's best interest to slow the tempo as much as possible. That's going to bring the score down a little bit because that's the only way they're really going to keep pace in this series is if they bring Indiana down to their level, slow it down, and that's going to bring those totals down as well. Odds makers may go hard in games 1 and 2, just anticipating high scoring games. But I think we are going to see a lot more unders than anticipated.
I agree. And the Pacers have shot exceedingly well so far. So expect that to regress a bit here once we get into game 1 and beyond. Look at the series then as a whole, on the floor, X's and O's, whatever you want. What is the X factor in your estimation for this series?
Well, just to kind of coincide with my pick of the New York Knicks in this sense, I think the ultimate X factor is going to be OG Anunoby, who, again, I have an emotional investment in, being a former Toronto Raptor. One of the hot topics on social media these days, at least amongst Raptors Twitter, is that who are you going to pick? OG Anunoby and the Pacers or OG Anunoby and the Knicks, and then Pascal Siakam and the Indiana Pacers. And right now, my heart is going towards Anunoby simply because he did not compete during that 2019 run. Siakam was undoubtedly the second best player on that title team, but Anunoby did not compete due to injury. The thing that surprised me the most when I was kind of researching Anunoby's production during this postseason, he's being paid as one of the elite 3-and-D wings in the sport. But during the postseason, the Knicks have actually been 13.2 points per 100 possessions better defensively when he is not in the game. And there's a lot of correlating factors with that. I'm not saying Anunoby is kind of dropping the ball on defense, but against Indiana, who is loaded to the brim with elite wings. I mean, they are on pace to have the greatest effective field goal percentage in the history of the NBA playoffs. He's going to have to go up against the Nesmiths and the Nemharts of the world. He's going to have to try and slow them down. He may even get some minutes on Tyrese Halliburton to an extent. But offensively, when you talk about the 3 portion of his 3-and-D repertoire, whenever he scores 20 or more points in the playoffs this year, the New York Knicks are 6-0. So if he's putting up big numbers in this series against Indiana, the Knicks are going to be in superstar shape, and they are going to advance to the NBA Finals. But again, he is so hot and cold. does fall in love with a three-point shot more often than not. He can get to the basket at will with his size, with his strength. So I think Anunoby is going to determine a lot in how this series ends up.
You mentioned you like the Knicks, you expect them to get out here, but what are you betting on for this series?
Well, I was looking at some of the value here. I mean, I kind of fall in line with what John Henson usually does when he makes his bets. He kind of goes with the over-under on the total amount of games. But right now, the number at FanDuel Sportsbook is set at 5.5. And the over, which I'm going to be taking, was at minus 188, which isn't really the strongest value in the world. So right now, I'm just going to get oddly specific and just say I'm taking the New York Knicks to advance to the NBA Finals, not jumping off the bandwagon as of yet. I'm taking that at plus 360 because, again, that over at 5.5 games doesn't really do much for me. And I'm kind of looking back, lest we forget the second round last year. The Indiana Pacers did eliminate the New York Knicks in 7 games. They beat them at Madison Square Garden on their home floor. Like, that still lingers to this day. But you look up and down the roster, the team that did lose that matchup, Julius Randle was unavailable due to injury. OG Anunoby only played 3 games in that series. Jalen Brunson broke his hand in Game 7. And obviously Bridges and Towns weren't on the roster as of yet, so a lot has changed since then. You know, Dante DiVincenzo isn't walking through that front door. I'm giving a lot of respect to the Pacers here by anticipating this series to go 7. I could see this ending up, it's a flip of the coin. If Indiana wins, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. But giving this Game 7 in New York, and I know last year that didn't necessarily help the Knicks in the end, but this is a fan base that is striving, that is dying to see this team get back to the NBA Finals and hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy. So if this series does go the distance and you have that raucous New York fan base going nuts, Tyrese Halliburton may be channeling his inner Trae Young and be the next big enemy in that state. Like, it's going to be crazy reactions. So I do see this going the distance, going 7 games, plus 360 value, but the Knicks ultimately take it.
He called it on October 2nd. He's calling it today ahead of Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. It is the Knicks to the final, and a veritable Sophie's choice for Chris, with 2 former Raptors star players squaring off in this one. There you go, Knicks to the finals. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.